And you know, I forgot to mention the fact that I'll be producing that show.
Yeah, if I may be permitted, we're going to be talking a lot about doo-wop. I think there's a lot of things for the boys and girls to learn. I think they'll come away with better appreciation of the genre. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a genre.
It's hard music to sing.
What's that, Tim?
It's hard music to sing. It requires some serious talent, you know.
Yes. Yeah, you got to think about what you're. This ain't just some chump change music that just came down the pipe. Yeah.
So, yeah, that genre, those people who had the skills to do that, I mean, they were poorly compensated for their efforts.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Y'all remember watching the Sha Na stuff on TV years ago?
Oh, I love Sha Na.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Back in their prime, they were, like, bad to the bone.
Well, you know where Sha Na actually exploded? Did you guys know the story behind that? How Sha Na actually exploded after their career basically kind of dried up, was withering away?
No.
When they got invited to play, when they got invited to play at Woodstock.
Oh,
really?
Yeah. What happened?
Right, that's
they were playing out at some venue in California, and Michael, what's his name? The guy that headed the whole thing up. I mean, he was the brainchild behind the whole thing. I always forget his last name. It comes to me hours later. But the guy that headed up the whole Woodstock deal. He went to some venue to see somebody else to invite them to come play. It might have been Sly and the Family Stone or something. But Sha Na was there, and he thought, it would be a great light moment to kind of tip our hats to where music, the music that we now are making and enjoying kind of came from. And Sha Na said, yeah, a couple guys in the band were like, oh, no, man, that's a bunch of hippies and stuff. Dude, we're cool cats. We ain't about that. And they're like, no, you're missing the whole point. If we go out there, it's going to get us exposure. They went out there, they got the exposure. And as a matter of fact, if you look at some of the outtake archives, you can see Jimi Hendrix standing off on the side, tapping his foot, snapping his fingers, and like getting down to Sha Na. It's hilarious. And it was after that they got invited to go on a tour over to Europe. They came back, and then they ended up getting like a television contract. They had the Sha Na show. They had radio show stuff they were doing, and their career took off for the next 40 years. And the leader Sha Na said, "Look, we owe it all to Woodstock." So there you have it. Anyway, we're not at Woodstock right now. We are at Timothy Abbott's CD release party, and
hey, Mark.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Are we going to just have a 2 Abbott night, or are we going to have more than just 2 Abbott songs?
Oh, it'll likely be us because everybody else in my band is out playing. So. I was going to go out and do some of the jam things with them, but tomorrow night I'm going to do an impromptu, probably 3 or 4 song run through of this stuff at a friend of mine's bar. That is it's only open to kind of like a quiet invite only because the bar isn't really open yet. But you can have live music there, and that's what we'll be rehearsing on a regular basis. So we're going to be like a regular fixture there. That'll be at Jack's, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to that, and then I'm thinking like on maybe next Wednesday and next Friday we're going to walk into a couple of different places where we're tight with some club owners and start actually playing this stuff out, little bits and pieces in an acoustic format, in
Austin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, do you want to give anybody? Do you have any? Can you give us a heads up so those who are in Austin listening can say, "Oh, he's going to be over at Shig Grenagrin's or whatever."
Well, we're going to be at Jack's on Saturday, which is the location. Anybody in Austin knows where it's at. It's just it won't be officially open, but if you go there, the doors are open. We'll be playing there. There'll be other musicians too. And we'll have a big jam party.
Cool. And that'll be when?
And that is this Saturday.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
All right. You heard it first here, boys and girls. All right. So, Tim, let's back up a little bit. No, I got another idea. Let's back up a whole lot. Let's go way, way back. I mean, way back to like the early days. Back when you had hair. Back when you were running around playing baseball. When you were in, well, how old were you when you first really, what music impressed you as a Ute?
I listened to the top 40 out of Chicago, which was on 2 big radio stations, WLS and
WLS. Yep.
Yeah, Larry Lou Jack in the morning, and John Records Landecker in the afternoon, I think. And they were the first of the real big DJs that I remember that, you know, I would listen to. And you listen to them just as much as you listen to the music, you know. They were, you know, really entertaining. And I wound up being influenced by the top 40. I mean, Creedence Clearwater was hot stuff, always the Beatles. There was the Beatles, and then there was, like, everybody else.
Oh, yeah.
The Beatles were huge, huge, huge. But then, you know, the Rolling Stones would pop up there every once in a while. Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, the whole Woodstock thing, the whole thing from 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, those were huge music years for me. They made a lasting impression on me.
Where were you living at the time?
I grew up in a small town in Iowa on the Mississippi River called Comanche.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. The population is about 4,000, something like that.
Okay, yeah, a little dinky burg like where I came from.
Yeah, it was a real Huck Finn kind of upbringing, you know.
Nice. Yeah, so you did exactly what I did. You'd tune into AM radio and you'd hear all the stuff that was playing. I used to catch a WLS at night because, you know, back then and even now you can pick up a skip and you pick up a station that's, 1,000 miles away, but at night it'll come right on through to you. And I used to listen to WLS 1 o'clock in the morning. My parents would have a fit. They walk in and I'd be under the covers with the little AM, little receiver and the flashlight on trying to tune in. Those dials back were horrible. So you had to catch them just right. And then, you'd listen to it and my brother would be like, he's playing music again. And I couldn't get enough of it. And my parents were like, go to sleep. What's wrong with you? So you were listening to pretty much a lot of the same stuff I was listening to.
Oh, yeah. God forbid there was a thunderstorm between you and Chicago where it was coming out.
And then you were
and you tried to listen to it. And every other, 5 seconds, there'd be a thunderbolt.
Yeah. Oh, it was awful.
But you'd still listen because, radio was that big back then. There was no video or anything like that. Mm-hmm. What video there was, you might be lucky enough to see on a television show like,
Clark
Blue or something, Midnight Special or some of those things.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So that was what started formulating your music. But how did you begin, actually doing something about it instead of just listening?
Adolescent release, I guess. I started writing prose and poetry. And, a fella in Clinton, Iowa, named Dave Layton, who was a really popular musician, plays piano and stand-up bass and saxophone. He saw my poetry and asked me if he could put some music to it. And I said, yeah. And so he wound up putting some music to it and started playing it around town. And people liked the song. And months went by and I kept hearing about the song. And then I finally heard the song. And I thought, wow, this is cool. I can maybe be part of something like this. And other people, I guess when I was growing up, in Clinton, Iowa, which is right next to Comanche, Iowa, just a little bit bigger. That was about 25,000 or so.
Oh.
And some other guys that were doing music back then, Jeremiah Harbrun and Rob Jones, these other guys, all local guys. I played some music with them, and then Dan Westerbeck was one of the first ones I did some music with that was writing his own music, and he was a big influence on me. He passed away of a heart defect about age 25 or so, and he was fixing to open up for Oingo Boingo. Kind of a sad story, but he was a pretty talented guy.
So when you started writing and this guy started doing your music, what were you? Were you in high school?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then what happened?
And then I got out of high school and played in some really, really bad cover bands. You try to sing just run the gamut of bad rock and roll that you can think of that's been played to death. I mean, Rocky Mountain Way. I hope I never hear the song again. I've heard it.
Yeah, there's a couple of them out there that just everybody, tortured us with.
Then that would progress from the usual run of those things, Smoke on the Water, that type of stuff, to AC/DC, and then you sing that stuff, and your voice. You got to have a voice to be able to handle that stuff because that was the Bon Scott stuff. That was good music. The other AC/DC post Bon Scott I never really liked very much because I thought, Brian Johnson was kind of just a screamer,
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he didn't have the guts that what's his name did. Yeah.
Yeah, Bon Scott. Sad life, but geez, that guy was really the quintessential front guy for a rock and roll band. I look back at it and I just think of all the lead singers I've seen. Daltrey, one of the best.
Like they were bad boys.
Mick Jagger, one of the best. Roger Daltrey, one of the best. But that Bon Scott guy, he was kind of a horse of a different color.
Yeah. Down under guy.
But I was influenced by other guys, other top four. I mean, Gordon Lightfoot. I used to dig some of his early stuff. I thought he was a brilliant songwriter.
Oh yeah.
Bob Dylan, obviously, great, masterful, songwriter.
Right.
I was influenced by the stuff like Sly and the Family Stone that was breaking back then. I thought that was cool, the way they incorporated horns and some of that funk stuff, And I didn't get into James Brown at the time because none of the radio stations were playing any of his stuff.
Right. Yeah. It was too out.
I understand why. I listen to it now. I shake my head. Was it too sexy for radio back then? Sex Machine is probably one of the quintessential greatest rock and roll tunes I've ever heard in my life.
But the parents
dissect it. You dissect music, Mark, like a bat song. Dissect it. And when you dissect it and you come across all these little parts, you can see the birth of about 50 other songs from each one of these little parts in there. The little piano riff that he does in there. Stuff like that. I'm just amazed by that. And one of the other big influences on me was Thick as a Brick by Jethro Tull. I still listen to it. And
I love that album.
I
love Thick as a Brick.
Yeah, one of the greatest works of art. And I guess, what was that, 72, 73, something like that?
Yep, right.
Yeah, to me, the greatest music that I ever listened to was from 67 to approximately 75, something like that.
Yeah, and then disco showed up and ruined everything.
Yeah, and it
I'm kidding. I used to boogie down.
Well, I think we all went through it. I mean, look at the Rolling Stones, for God's sakes. I mean, even Kiss. I never had much respect for Kiss. They put on a great show, but I thought their music was just so simplistic.
Well, there's something to be said for simplistic. Sometimes people go.
They made a lot of money off it. They put on a great show.
Who, Kiss?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I saw them twice. Matter of fact, in 1977 or something, I read an article in Cream magazine where Gene Simmons was answering all these questions, and the guy said, "Well, how much money you guys got?" And he said, "Well, we could retire and buy Idaho."
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. At that time, all the millionaires lived in Idaho for some reason. A lot of money in potatoes, but I love showmanship, and boy, I saw them one time down at the Spectrum in Philly, and Bob Seger and the Silver Bolt Band opened, and Bob Seger is a fantastic performer, but they were outmatched. They were outmatched because Bob gets up there with his band and sings and performs, like he's a showman. And he doesn't have explosions. He doesn't spit blood, and there's no, smoke coming out of his guitar. So he was outmatched. It was just they should have had Alice Cooper open for him, but they had Bob Seger, and it was sad in a way because a lot of the audience didn't really care for Bob Seger. They wanted Kiss, and I felt bad for Bob because I don't think he got the the real
strange opening act. That I've seen some weird billings too. I told you about that last time when I saw, for God's sakes, T-Rex open up for Three Dog Night. I mean,
that's right. Didn't you say you were like right in the front row? And
and I was a kid, and Mark Bolan became one of my rock and roll heroes when it was hot as heck that day, a summer day, and he opened up a Budweiser, took a couple hits off it, and I raised my hand up, and just like one of the Joe Green commercial, with whatever it is, Coke or whatever it was.
Yeah, right.
He gives me this beer can, and it's half full, and I was like, oh, wow. And all these people around me were envious and kind of jostling, trying to get it and everything.
Yeah.
I just felt here I was, 16, 17 years old, and it was wow. It was my first brush with fame.
Yeah, it's almost as good as him handing you a guitar.
Yeah. In fact, he would be dead, a few, 3-4 years later in a car accident. Sad.
Yeah,
Mark Bolan, T-Rex.
And Tommy. Yeah, both of them died.
Yeah, sad.
So, all right, so you let's see. I know some of your other history. You worked in a factory. You worked as a delivery driver. You did a couple different things. You moved around, but you were always in music at the same time, right?
I've always had a myriad of these just godforsaken jobs to get me through my life so I can do my music, and it's so
I'm so glad to hear somebody say that because sometimes honestly, some people get the impression that somebody who's really, like what you have come up with here with Our Time Has Come. I imagine there are people that say, wow, this guy must have a life of privilege, and he must have